Hey everyone, so before I start this, I would like to apologize for any mispronunciations that may or may not happen. I'm pretty sure there's a couple things I ended up mispronouncing in this one. Please excuse me, I'm sorry. Reincarnation is a belief held by many, but as with many beliefs, it's difficult, if not impossible, to prove. In 1952, two friends believed they had some proof that it is real. Virginia was born on April 27, 1923 in Madison, Wisconsin, and lived with her birth parents until she was 3 years old. I am unsure as to why, but Virginia was raised by her aunt and uncle in Chicago, and she would go on to study at Northwestern University. After college, she moved to Denver, Colorado with a friend, and this is where she met her first husband. They later moved to Pueblo, Colorado, and this is where the story of Bridey Murphy begins. But before we get there, I should introduce the hypnotist. Maury Bernstein was a successful businessman living in Pueblo, Colorado. He was drawn to the more mystical topics in life, things like clairvoyance, telepathy, and especially reincarnation. He was known for all these things and as an amateur hypnotist among his friends, and one of those friends happened to be Virginia Tighe. At some point in their friendship, Bernstein and Tighe began sessions of hypnotic regression and found Bridey Murphy. During the hypnotic sessions, Virginia would lay on a couch, and Maury would begin a brief hypnotic induction. He used the classic technique of having Virginia focus on a flickering candle. Maury then told her to go back, 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 until you find yourself in another place, in another time, and when I speak to you again, you will tell me about it. Maury took her back to childhood, and then began to take her back even further, to a time before she was Virginia, and this is where they found Murphy. The pair began recording these sessions on November 29, 1952, and in total they recorded 6 hypnotic regression sessions. They were recorded over the time frame stretching from November 1952 to October 1953. In these recordings, it is claimed that Virginia, speaking as Bridey, spoke in a strong Irish brogue. Virginia herself had never been to Ireland and wasn't known to be able to do an Irish brogue by her friends. According to the sessions, Bridey Murphy lived in 19th century Ireland, born on December 20th, 1798, to Protestant parents Kathleen and Duncan Murphy. Bridey said her family lived in a white-framed wooden house in the Meadows district in County Cork. The bright red-haired Bridey was named after her grandmother, Bridget. Bridey recalled getting in trouble when she was 4 years old for scratching metal off of her bed, and that it was the same year that her baby brother died. Bridey recounted the books that her mother would read her, like The Sorrows of Deirdre. She talked about a woman's clothing store in the area called Caden House. Bridey married a man named Sean Brian Joseph McCarthy. The couple moved to Belfast, but Bridey admitted she liked her hometown better. He taught law at Queen's University, and his favorite meal was boiled beef and onions. She gave the full names of some of her friends at the time, like Mary Catherine and Kevin Moore of Belfast. Bridey stated that at this time in her life she attended St. Teresa's Church. She also recounted tales from Irish folklore, like the story of Cuchulainn. She would use Gaelic words and then translate them into English for Maury, and she would similarly use Irish colloquialisms. Bridey sang Irish songs for Maury. However, Danny Boy was her favorite song. She also spoke of dancing to the morning jig. Maury then gave her a post-hypnotic suggestion and asked her to perform the dance after the session, and Virginia did. When Bridey was 66 years old, she fell down her stairs, which fractured her hip, and that disabled her. She described herself as a burden, as she had to be carried everywhere, but she did say that her husband took good care of her in this time. One Sunday, when her husband went to church, Bridey died painlessly. After this, Bridey claimed that she stayed in her home and knew that her husband was very upset that he wasn't there with her. She claimed that when he died, he did not join her in the house, so she went back to Cork and stayed in her brother Duncan's house. She tried to speak with him, but stated that he never answered her and did not know she was there. For the 59 years between Bridey's death and Virginia's birth, Bridey claimed that she just wandered in a lifeless, feelingless place. During this time, she saw and talked with several other dead folk that she knew when she was alive. One was her younger brother that died when he was a baby. Bridey claimed that he was able to speak in that realm. He didn't know who she was until she told him, and he only really remembered their brother Duncan. When asked about being reborn, like who set it up, who picked the body, Bridey didn't know. The story of this hypnotic regression was first published in the Denver Post in 1954 by William J. Baker. Then, in early 1956, the publisher Doubleday released Morey Bernstein's book, The Search for Bridey Murphy. It became an international bestseller, was published in 30 languages, and was on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 months. By the time the book was published, the movie rights had already been sold. Virginia Tighe requested that she be given a pseudonym, and so she was called Ruth Mills Simmons in the book and the movie. The book was later re-released in 1965 with the addition of the hypnotic session recordings. They also included interjection by Mr. Baker in an attempt to prove the account factual. The recordings of the sessions were translated into several languages and ended up selling very well. The book and movie created somewhat of a phenomenon. People threw Bridey Murphy-themed parties, places served reincarnation cocktails, and parents were greeting their newborn babies with a "welcome back." Songs were created like The Love of Bridey Murphy by Billy Devereaux's Deviliers and Do You Believe in Reincarnation by Lalo Guerrero. Both songs are available on YouTube. Stan Freberg released a satirical sketch in 1956 using some of what was said on the first hypnosis session. The recorded sketch was called The Quest for Bridey Hammerschlagen, and you can listen to it on YouTube. In 1966, Virginia Tighe appeared on a game show called To Tell the Truth, which you can also watch on YouTube. Links to all of these will be provided in the description box. Generally, the press's initial coverage of Bridey Murphy was without critical analysis. This was probably because there was strong public interest in the story being valid. However, that wasn't to last. Investigations into the claims came from both people who believed her and people who did not. Chicago Americans sent out reporters to both the Chicago neighborhood Tighe grew up in, as well as the places in Ireland that Murphy allegedly lived. The investigation into the claims began to start when the book became a bestseller. The investigators combed through the book and checked up on every detail that they could. Starting off, I am going to go over some of the criticisms of Morey Bernstein's hypnotic technique. Some have dissected the way that Bernstein hypnotized Tighe, as well as their friendship. Bernstein was known to have a strong personal belief in reincarnation, and this could have influenced the sessions. They argue that she might have felt expected to comply with this belief. They've pointed out that the direct instructions towards a hypnotized subject that sees the hypnotist as an authority figure could alter the subject's response, which is a possibility that was their dynamic. Morey Bernstein had even stated that he was amazed at how susceptible Virginia Tighe was to the hypnotic process and suggestions. The investigators that went to Ireland descended on the area in Cork in which Bridey claimed to have been born, and the place in Belfast where she claimed to have died. Since a birth date was given, December 20th, 1798, the investigators immediately looked for birth records. When they came out empty-handed, they went to look for a death certificate, as they knew the year and area she was to have died. Again, they found nothing. It was said that Bridey grew up in a wooden house in the meadows. The investigators went to find the house or evidence of it being there. They again found nothing, and also learned that at that time, most houses in Ireland were made of brick or stone. Investigators also dived into Queen's University, Belfast, and found that it did not exist at the time when Bridey's husband was to have worked there. Also, it was pointed out that the way that she pronounced her husband's name would have been pronounced differently in Ireland. I personally can't do the two different pronunciations because honestly it has just confused my head as to how I'm not saying it the same both times. Moving on. Bridey also preferred to call her husband Brian, which was the middle name of Virginia's husband at the time. The church that Bridey claimed to have attended does exist. However, it wasn't built until 1911. The investigators in Chicago began by looking into Virginia's childhood to find if there were any correlations with Bridey. I won't be covering absolutely everything they found, as it is a lot. I'll just be going over the bigger findings. Virginia was raised by her uncle and aunt, who were Norwegian and German, Scottish, Irish, respectively. She did live with her birth parents until she was 3 years old, and her parents were both part Irish. Bridey and Virginia's mothers share similar names. Bridey's mom was Kathleen, and Virginia's mom is Catherine. When Virginia was 5, she lost a little brother, which was similar to Bridey losing her little brother when she was 4. The house that Virginia grew up in was similar to the house Bridey described as her family home in Cork. Virginia had a couple Irish influences growing up. She had an aunt who came from Ireland that would tell Virginia Irish stories and talk about how life was like there. The neighbor that lived across the street from Virginia was an Irish immigrant named Bridey Murphy Corkell. Although Virginia would claim she never knew Bertie's maiden name, Bertie's unmarried sister lived there as well, and her name was Margaret Murphy. Virginia's uncle also recalled that as a child she enjoyed doing Irish jigs and could imitate an Irish brogue very well. A high school teacher of Virginia's noted that she was involved in drama and memorized several Irish monologues that she would deliver in an Irish brogue. The investigations resulted in a sort of diagnosis of cryptomnesia, but as with these types of topics, there are people who disagree with this analysis. Cryptomnesia is interesting and was first documented in 1874. It happens when forgotten memories come back, but the person does not recognize it as a memory and instead believes that it is something new. It's like remembering a joke or invention or a song and thinking you came up with it. The person isn't participating in plagiarism on purpose, they're just experiencing the memory as if it were new. Also, if you do watch the To Tell the Truth video, they claim that investigators had proven that Bridey Murphy existed. However, I couldn't find these accounts or their evidence, so if you have links or proof or whatever, please comment section, let me know. Virginia did not enjoy being in the spotlight and shunned a lot of the opportunities to cash in on the Bridey Murphy craze. She had also stated, quote, "If I had known what was going to happen, I would have never lain down on the couch," end quote. She died Virginia May Morrow on July 12, 1995 of cancer. Maury Bernstein abandoned his career as an amateur hypnotist after the Bridey Murphy experience. He became a recluse and ended up being a prominent local philanthropist. He died on April 2, 1999 in Pueblo, Colorado, of a cardiac arrhythmia. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. If you found it interesting, please leave it a like and share it with somebody else who might find it interesting. And, check out my channel. It's filled with kind of stuff like this, and true crime stuff, ghost stuff, weird history stuff. And if you're super interested, you should probably subscribe. To my subscribers, thank you guys so much for joining me in this journey of trying to get more stories out there. Sometimes I do more known stories, but I try to do lesser known stories a lot too. And I appreciate that you guys want to come along for that ride. And as always, stay safe, take care of each other, and sleep tight.